Huh?
Hi, everybody. It's a pleasure to have all of you here, and hope we can all hear some valuable shares from all our speakers today. And so to start off, I'm just going to give a brief intro about our organization. So our organization is called All Inclusive Foundation, and it's a not-for-profit organization which was started by four of us friends, and who, like, all four of us have already been working in the spaces of inclusion and marginalization for many years. And through this foundation, what we try to do is we attempt to bring together our lived and professional experiences onto a common platform. And at the heart of the organization is the belief that we need to work on the environment of the marginalized person, individual. So in this case, the autistic individual, to enable inclusive communities and to create opportunities while supporting the individual's lifespan needs. And we do this by adapting environments as well as empowering people surrounding these individuals. So that would include parents and families first and foremost. And all this we endeavor to do following the saying, nothing for us without us. And that is the reason why we start off listening to people with the lived experience of being autistic. So without much ado, I will hand over the space to Navneet Kulkarni to introduce himself. So we'll have a round of introductions of the speakers, and then we'll listen to them. So Navneet, happy to have you with us and to listen to you. Once. Okay, so Navneet is a non-speaking autistic individual. So this is his brief introduction about himself. Oops, 1 second. I think I forgot to share the sound. Just give me 1 minute.
My name is Navneet Kulkarni. I am from Silapur, Maharashtra. I am 17 years old boy on autism spectrum. I am a non-speaker boy. I use AAC for communication. I use rapid prompting method for communication. Sometime I use gesture and sometime with 2-letter words only with speaking. I am an author. I wrote many quotes, poems, fictional stories. I am very passionate about writing my first book, Autism, God's Beautiful Creation. God published last year. I want to spread awareness about AAC. I want to spread inclusion of neurodiversity in the society.
Thank you, Navneet. So over to you, Viraj. Viraj, you'll have to unmute yourself. So Viraj is an adult on the autism spectrum. And I don't want to speak too much because he would like to introduce himself. Viraj, shall we come back to you? Okay, Bindu, could you go ahead and introduce yourself while Viraj? Bindu? Pranjal, can you just check why they are unable to unmute?
I think there is a restriction placed.
Okay, okay.
Now,
So Viraj, can you just check now?
Yeah, kindly check now whether you are able to unmute yourself. Sorry. Yeah.
Okay, hi. Am I audible now?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
So my name is Viraj. I work as a developer associate in SAP Labs. I live in Bengaluru. And I was diagnosed with dyslexia and Asperger's syndrome within a spectrum of autism. And I identify myself as an introvert.
Thank you, Viraj. Thank you. Bindu?
Yeah. Hi, Chitra. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can. Please go
Hello.
ahead.
Yeah. Thanks. Hello, everyone. Excited to be here. Thank you, Chitra, for inviting me. I am Bindu Sripadraja from Bengaluru, mother of a 5-year-old beautiful boy, Sriram. I worked for about 14 years as an engineer before my son got diagnosed. And then I took a break from work to be with my son and to understand him and his world better and to be his friend. So I'm not there yet, but I'm working on it every day. I love to read, watch a lot of movies, and listen to different types of music. And my son shares the same interest, so we are getting along quite well. And my big goal is for Sriram to have a very amazing and happy childhood, just like any other 5-year-old, and for him to have a happy, independent, and meaningful life as he grows up. Thank you.
Thank you, Bindu. That's such a wonderful thought. Neha, could you introduce yourself?
I'm audible?
Yeah, you're audible. Yeah.
So very good evening to you all. I'm Neha Kulkarni, mother of Navneet Kulkarni. I'm a special mom with 15 years of experience in dealing with autistic child. In this special journey, first few years were very hard. You know, every day was a new challenge, a new struggle, new learning, with lot of failures actually. In this lot of failures in my life, I have learned a lot and experienced from that, you know. We had come chasing all the obstacles in our life. We had came so long way and still long way to go. So today I feel so proud to introduce myself as a mother of an author. I feel so happy to know that our kids are coming forward now to share their experience, because autism is beyond the book. What we know, you know, the day-to-day experience and the feeling, the pain, what they feel, dealing with the autism, being in that, the pain is very different from what we have learned, you know. So I'm very happy to know our kids are coming forward to share their insights. So thank you so much for inviting me for this event. I'm so feeling so honored to be the part of this event. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Neha. So we'll go on to hear Suja's introduction. Suja, can you introduce yourself?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Am I audible?
Yeah, we can hear you clear. Suja, please go ahead.
Hello, everyone. I'm Suja Prasharodi, and I have a 12-year-old son who's in the autism spectrum. So I have a master's in English literature, and I've worn many a hat, including working retail, books and publishing, training and teaching. In fact, when I was working as a trainer, I realized I love kids and I love teaching kids. So I quit my job and enrolled for a full-time BA and worked for a while as a teacher. Now, today I realized all those jobs were preparing me for the most challenging job of my life, which is raising Dhruv and homeschooling him without losing my sanity and sense of humor. I also have an autism blog where I share my experiences and try to build awareness. It's called A Mom's Tryst with Autism. Yeah, that's it. I'm glad to be here. Thank you, Chitra.
Thank you, Suja. Thank you. And Anjana, could you introduce yourself? So we just heard from people on the spectrum and from moms. Now I think it's the turn of two people who are working in their professional capacity. So we'll start off with Anjana. Anjana?
Yeah, thank you, Chitra. Greetings, everybody. My name is Anjana Satyabodha. I'm currently based in Bengaluru. I work as an independent practitioner. I'm a speech language pathologist with 12 plus years of experience. I specialize in multimodal communication, including augmentative and alternative communication. I consider communication to be a toolbox. And within this toolbox, we have speech, we have writing, typing, gestures, signs, and even using a communication device or a communication system to communicate. So my job is to empower individuals with communication challenges with this toolbox, which will either augment the speech that they have or provide an alternative mode of communication. So I consider communication to be the topmost priority for individuals with communication challenges. So that's about my work and communication. And I wish the job title was communication therapist rather than speech language therapist. Okay, and about autism, it has been quite a journey, I must say. So there is a saying in psychology that perception is projection. Like what we understand and perceive about anything or anyone, we tend to project that on others. So I started off with that kind of projection, I feel, when I started working soon after, as I was out of college and started working with autistic children. But over the years, after I think the paradigm shift came when I started reading, listening to autistic individuals, and learning about neurodiversity and so on. So that's when I had a paradigm shift, and I felt that no matter how many trainings, how many specializations you have, it's always the best way to work with an autistic individual is to go with a clean slate. Absolutely no assumptions, and just meet them where they are. So that has been my journey, and yeah, thank you so much, and it's lovely to be on this panel, and looking forward to hearing more from everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Anjana. Two very powerful things you've put out there about perceptions and also about the importance of communication. So over to you, Akshay. Would be great to have you introduce yourself.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Chitra. Hello, everybody. Good evening. My name is Akshay, and I am the co-founder and director of an organization called as Sense Kaleidoscopes in Bangalore. We ensure academic and artistic excellence by designing unique creative arts and academic programs based on a strength-based curricula for and with the autistic community through Sense Kaleidoscopes. That's what we essentially do. We also work to ensure artistic, emotional, financial, and livelihood independence or semi-independence for people on the spectrum, while assisting with the curation of their artworks, branding of the artists, and building of sustainable artistic communities to enable their practices. So in a nutshell, that's essentially what we do. I did my master's in philosophy from the Glasgow University and the Glasgow School of Art, which is where I think I was initiated into moving into this area of work. I'm quite aware that what I am doing is not something that is very easily or done or heard of. So if I'm saying things that you're not able to connect with, then please feel free to stop me and ask questions. My journey with autism began in Spastic Society, which is where Nalini Menon many years ago was setting up the first autism deck. And I started with volunteering over there. I had graduated as an artist from Chitrakala Parishad and was working as a graphic designer. My passion was to use my current skill set and see what I could enable for autism. That's how I took off for my master's in philosophy to Scotland, did my education, worked over there for 10 years, and then have come back to India and am trying to kind of bring the same practices from there, which I think are extremely progressive in nature. So that's me. Thank you. Thank you, Chitra.
Thank you, Akshay, and nice to have you on. So thank you all the speakers for lovely introductions, and we're very happy to have you here. So before I start with the questions, I just want to put it out there to all the people who've joined us. Thank you for joining us. And if you have any questions, please put it in the chat and we will get back to it after a round of conversations with the panelists. Okay, so thank you. And please keep yourself muted if of course, the speaker is allowed to unmute. So without much delay, my first question is for Navneet. So since Navneet takes a long time to spell out on the letterboard, it's a complicated process. So he has sent across his response which I will be sharing with you, and his mom, Neha, will be reading out the response. So the question to him was, could you share about how life changed after you started communicating using spelling, letterboarding, or typing? And the second part of the question was, is there any suggestion or advice you would like to give people who support and work with autistic individuals who do not use speech for communication? So I'm just going to share his response. And yeah. Neha, would you like to read it out for us?
Yeah. So his answer is drastic change in my life when I started using letterboard typing for communication. Life turned from flight mode to swing mode, non-speaker to more communicative now through typing. Darkness in light was my life before using typing for communication. All thoughts were just getting summarized only in mind, so dead like feeling inside. My doors of mind were unopened, being more verbal with no communication, without expressing my thoughts uh, and feelings, always guilted me. But when I started using typing for communication, my life changed. People started seeing my abilities.
Okay, I'll just share the answer to the second question also. Just give me one second. Yeah. So the second question was about any suggestion or advice he would like to give to people who support individuals who don't speak and who are on the spectrum. So Neha?
Yes, yes. Firstly, firstly, I would like to thank you for asking my suggestions. With my gift of talent and experience, I feel so happy and glad to connect with people who are communicative partners for autistic kids. The communication partners are the ones who interact with an autistic non-speakers using AAC mode for communication. The suggestions which I feel like sharing with you all is, I have seen and heard many mothers and speech therapists being AAC communication partners for non-speakers. Both both parents and family members should be good communication partners. Every person in the therapy center should know how to interact with non-speakers. They should get training of AAC, including occupational therapists, special educators, physiotherapists, because autistic kids are under many different therapies. Communication happens whole day. Compassion, patience, and empathy are the more powerful words which communication partners should carry inside while communicating with the child. He says, communication partners should choose AAC according to the child's sensory comfort. Many kids are hypersensitive to vision. So while using any aided AAC, observe if the child is comfortable with the screen. While using any AAC apps for communication, do install original pictures of house, family members, teachers, doctors, pictures of restaurants, hospitals, and school in which child is surrounded with. Use emotions picture, not of emojis, but use pictures of boy or a girl with different emotions. And your weekend planner in the gallery should be the picture of places where you're going to visit. The sound and voice pitch should be medium low. I always love when people talk with me softly and clearly. Use some child's voice behind reading words and sentences, because a child's voice is different from adults. If adult teenagers are using picture-based communication, then use voice according to their gender.
Thank you so much, Navneet. Thank you for those valuable insights. Yes, indeed, communication happens the whole day, and patience and empathy are two qualities that anybody needs to have. Thank you so much, Navneet. So now we go on to Viraj. And Viraj, my question to you is, can
Okay.
you describe your educational experiences while growing up? From your experience, how do you think the educational approach should adapt to cater to the needs of autistic children? Could you also share what you feel could have been different from your school life? And my last bit, so it's a long question. So Viraj got married recently. So my last question to him is, could you also share a little about the experience of getting married and finding your life partner?
Sure.
Viraj?
Yeah, I'm there. First of all, my experience in school, right?
Yeah, experience in school. So how was your experience in school?
Okay, it was just average, less than average actually, because I was forced to acquire knowledge which is not exactly practical in professional life, and knowledge which I could have easily acquired in through other sources also. And the teachers, both in normal schools and special schools, didn't have the right psychology and mindset to educate. So they were not exactly very professional. Yeah.
Those are very sad things to hear. The very people who were supposed to support you seem to have failed you, Viraj.
To an extent, yes.
So is there anything that you feel could have been different, that could have been different?
Yeah,
Like,
sure. I feel that they should have taught subjects which have practical use for career growth. Like vocational subjects. And first of all, they should be trained to be self-employed, which is not the case. And practical should be given more priority than theory. That is my opinion. And people, especially parents of autistic people and autistic students themselves, should understand that homeschooling is an option in India, especially for boards like NIOS. Yes, and
thank you. Thank you for being really out about it, that parents should think of homeschooling and alternative options also, rather than just trying to push their autistic children through the whole struggle of a mainstream school if the child struggles in such a situation. And
yes,
lastly, could you share a little about your experience of getting married, finding your life partner?
it was
How has
a
it been?
very I was very happy. I'm very happy for that. But yes, but it is not exactly as smooth as I expected it to be, but it was still very blissful. But I feel that I would have been happier if I were married in my early 20s.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Viraj, for that. And all our blessings for you and Ayotakshi, that's his wife's name. Thank you for being here and responding to our query.
Thank you.
So we will move on to Bindu. And my question to Bindu is, what are some of the therapies that your child is attending now? And how did you decide on which therapy to go by? Like, could you just share?
Yeah, sure, Chitra. So Sriram got diagnosed at the age of 3 with autism and sensory processing disorder and communication disorder. So we started with occupational therapy right away. Right now he's 5, so it's been more than like 2 years since we started occupational therapy, and it has helped him a lot in terms of calming him down, increasing his sitting tolerance, and him being more tolerating of the environment around him. Then we started speech therapy a little later, but it did not really work out well for him because the traditional methods were more focusing more on imitation of what the therapist says, and my son could not imitate anything at all at that time. So we changed multiple therapists, and it led to a lot of frustration and anxiety for my son. and he would come out crying and screaming and never wanted to go back to the therapist. So finally, we found someone who diagnosed him with apraxia of speech. Till then, we had not heard of it at all. So that meant that he is not able to plan his movements, oral motor movements, to produce sounds and make, say words. So it made it very clear for us that his speech is going to take a much longer time than we had expected. So we thought it would be best to bring in an alternative mode of communication for Sriram. So we started using Avaz with him since he was 4. So we started taking classes with Avaz team on how to use the device, how to add more and more language to the device incrementally, and how to make Sriram comfortable with it, how to model it for him. So now he's very comfortable using Avaz. He's very conversant with it, and he uses it at home and in his online classes as well. So when the teacher asks him a question, he uses Avaz to answer the teacher, and he doesn't find himself to be different from other kids, other neurotypical kids in the class, and he is very confident when he answers. He does mathematics very quickly, and he uses Avaz to tell the answer. So it has instilled a lot of confidence in him. And he's also vocalizing when he uses the device more often, and he uses the same words again and again. He's trying to say that now, so which is a positive change for us. So hopefully he will be able to say some words soon. And another big change we saw was he was very reluctant to write. So now when he constructs a sentence in Avaz and says, I want ice cream, or I want chocolate ice cream. So now he knows the words and he knows the spellings. So instead of using Avaz, he finds it easier to just take a chalk piece and go to the board and write the whole sentence. He writes, I want chalk piece, I want chocolate ice cream. So it's a big thing for us, because otherwise motivating him to write was very difficult. He has some fine motor issues, can't hold the pencil, can't move his hands freely. So Avaz did a lot for us, and it has been a game changer. And one thing I would like to add about therapists, because I went through very bitter experiences with therapists in Bangalore. Two things we always look for in therapists are, first thing is Sriram should feel safe with the therapist and in the environment in the therapy center. So any form of physical or verbal abuse or judgmental remarks like, you are now 5, you should have been doing this, but you are lagging behind by so many years, or lagging behind by so much. And we want to set the goal so that we push you to that age appropriate behavior. So such places we clearly avoid, because that will only demotivate him. Any kind of developmental chart that is made for neurotypical people is not going to fit him. So even if you make a Herculean effort of fitting him into that chart, it is only going to make him disappointed and demotivated. So we avoid such places. And second thing is Sriram is very interested in puzzles and books and games and all that. So we request the therapist to include his special interests in any activities that they set up for him. So whenever the therapist tells us that it is going to be an obsession for him, it's going to be a repeated behavior, and you just take away all those things from him, take away all his puzzles and numbers and alphabets, we know that the therapist is heading in the wrong direction, and we should look for someone else. So far, our therapists have been cooperative with us, and they have they have said yes to whatever requests we have made, and his progress has been good. He has been able to say a few more words and use them in the right context. And just the mere fact that we are able to understand him, and when he says no, we stop the activity and we give him a break. So he knows that we understand him. So that has given him some confidence and motivation to say more. So we are very happy with the therapists, the way they're going right now.
Thank you, Bindu. You shared two very powerful things. First of all, communication, and how it has been a game changer for you. And this is something even Navneet mentioned earlier. So communication and the difference it can bring to the life of an autistic child, like you've also added to what Navneet just said. And the second thing that stood out for me was the way you are advocating for Sriram, which is wonderful, and all the best for you that you continue to do it. And I hope other parents listening in also take the cue from a parent like Bindu. And of course, there are 2 more parents to follow, but to advocate for your child, because they need it from us. Thank you, Bindu. So we'll move on to Neha. And Neha, what I would like to ask you is, could you share your journey with Navneet's communication. So, like, how did you come to the realization that Navneet could communicate using an alternate mode other than speech? And now that he's communicating, of course, I'm sure you are also advocating like Bindu. So could you share your experiences of advocating for him? And
Sure. So communication is plays a major role in the life. As communication, there is no life without communication. What my son says, so I even like other parents also, like other mothers. Even I tried a lot on working on his speech. Since from the first when he was diagnosed till 12 years, I tried a lot on his speech development. I have used a lot of oral activities, oral massages, and oral all these things. But that all worked only for the feeding difficulties which he was having. But the speech was very hard for him. Then before that, only what I teached was, through only through flashcards and using the special tools and all. I teached him the basic concepts and all. But I was working on the speech development for 10, 12 years. But along with that, my priority was, of course, the communication. I have to make my child to share his pain was my concern, strong concern from the when he was childhood. Means whatever the pain he feels, he has to tell, whether whatever the mode of communication with the behavior, with gestures. So I used a lot of gestures while teaching. Means I used a lot of gestures for the receptive language. First thing was to develop his receptive language. The language I am using, he should whether he is understanding what I am telling or not. So first main focus was on developing his receptive language. For that, I used a lot of gestures for communication. Then after 12 years, I realized that yes, somehow the need-based communication was through pointing and all through gestures. It was happening. But what if he grows up and become adult? What about the feelings and thoughts? How he may be having some different talents. How could he share? That was my concern after when he entered the teenage. So I thought, why should I not use the typing for communication? Not for communication, just I wanted to try that whether he knows typing or not. Just starting, just I introduced, I made him to. It was not just like I made him to sit on the. I made him to sit on in front of the keyboard, and he started communication. First, I made want to know that whether he knows to type letters. Then slowly I started type A, B, C. Then he followed all that, and slowly that the letters turned to two-letter words, three-letter words, and the pictures with. When I showed the picture, he typed the sight words of that and all. And after that, I used the question. Then the two-way communication started. I started, "What is your name?" I typed in the computer that, "What is your name?" And he typed, "My name is Navneet Kulkarni." Then the two-way communication started growing. But for the few months, he was little bit comfortable, but slowly he get it distracting with the big screens and all. As he is having lot of sensory issues, he's hypersensitive to vision and all. But after few months, he get it distracted with big screen. So I thought I should use the tab with wireless Bluetooth keyboard and all, so that I can keep the tab far, and I can make him to sit comfortably and use the keyboard on using on his lap. So it also worked a lot. Then slowly I used I planned, I used the letterboard. After few months, I used the letterboard. The letterboard which I used 3 years back was the board tracing board, just like the alphabets tracing board, which I used that for his handwriting work. But it some way it worked. Then he only came and told that, "I want the letterboard like the keyboard pattern," he said. So that means the keyboard which we use in the computer. So I said, "Oh, okay, I got it done, the letterboard for him only with the like the keyboard pattern, with only the A to Z numbers and 0 to 9 0 to 9 numbers and A to Z alphabet letters. So he was very happy, and only with the punctuations of full stop, comma, and only the space bar.
That
So
sounds like having been a very eventful journey, right, Neha? Like, I
yes,
can only imagine having also gone through something similar, like
yes,
the all the doubts and the questions that keep popping up at each stage. But really, hats off to you that you persisted and you found a way for him to communicate. So, could you also just tell us a little about how do you advocate for him? Like, do you share with people about his needs, or does he do it totally by himself now? Like,
he does totally by himself, but
okay,
totally himself. He communicates with his dad also, but not with the lengthy sentences and the way how he communicates with me, but with the very limited answers, yes or no. And he communicates with his daddy in Marathi. He asks in Marathi. He
wow.
types. He types in.
That's very nice to hear, and I
Uh,
think it
letter.
also sets the thing out. Like, there's always a point that is told to parents that autistic children can't understand more than one language. So he's just
He
broken
talks
that.
Kannada also. He chats
Yeah.
with my mother in Kannada. My mother tongue is
Thank
Kannada.
you.
So there is
Yeah.
so
Thank
chat.
you so
He's
much,
more
Neha,
happy.
for
Thank you
all
so
that
much.
you shared. So over to you, Suja. So I know, like, I know you personally, and I know you have supported your child, uh, and you've chosen a very non-conventional path. And we, like, anybody will understand that it must have been very difficult. It's not an easy path to follow. So, how would you describe the journey right from the doubts that you started having about the mainstream services, and you finally taking the decision to switch, and your journey ever since? So, could you share, Suja? Yeah, over to you.
Yeah. Hi, Chitra. Thank you for having me on this panel. And so we've had a different journey from majority of the autism parents. Like when Dhruv was a toddler, he had speech delay, but we were told it's normal and happens to many children, especially boys. And he was a friendly child. He loved music. He started reading very early. So he was diagnosed with sensory processing disorder at 4.5. And we were told that he may have autism, which is a scary thing because you don't know for sure, but it's not classical. So we had to wait for a while to get a diagnosis. And so just do therapies till then. So we did therapies, and we did a lot of intensive occupational therapies. And at 6, he was diagnosed with autism and dyspraxia. And at 6.5, we started early intervention. Typically, early intervention stops at 6. Now, we were in Delhi at that time, and he was going to an inclusive school. So with schooling and therapies, the speech developed, his vocabulary and language slowly started developing. But he also had dyspraxia. So writing was a challenge, and so was academics. Now, my husband Gopan was in the Navy, and so we knew that a posting was due soon. So I did a lot of research, and we asked for Bangalore because we realized Bangalore has a lot of resources for us. Simultaneously, we had also started teaching him music because he had always loved music ever since he was a baby. And he knew a lot of shlokas just by listening to them. So we moved to Bangalore, we find an inclusive school, and they were very sensitive. They said, yeah, you can use the iPad because he can't write. But after the assessment, they said that, we'll be putting him down by 2 classes because he's got comprehension issues. So that was a little bit of a jolt for me. But we said, well, we had shifted bag and baggage, everything just, on the basis of this school. So we said, fair enough, we put him in the school. And with schooling on one side, he joined the Bangalore School of Music. And he started learning, he was already learning keyboard in Delhi. So he started with piano and he started with Western vocals. Now what happened was he was in a new city. See, when you move cities, it's a transition. So the child was in a new city, a new home, new school, new everything. And he was trying his best to adapt to all the changes. after 5 years in Delhi, where he had developed a comfort zone. He's a verbal child. He had no behavior issues and he looked like any other kid. So in the school, the expectations were very high from him, while in reality, he was going through a lot of anxiety. So within a few months, we realized the schooling was not working out and we were wasting his and our time. The teachers all loved him because he was a happy, shy kid who sat quietly. He didn't create any problems in class. So practically speaking, we could have continued sending him to school for a few more years. But it got us thinking, how will it help us? What purpose is it going to serve? See, his comprehension issues was there. So he was struggling with academics. And Gopan was in a transferable job, being in the Navy. So every few years, we had to move cities. So we had to think of a viable option, as it was clear that traditional methods are not going to work for Dhruv. Now, one thing which we realized is over the years that music is his strength. That was his happy place. So then Gopan had a brainwave. He said, why not make music the main focus of his education and build everything around it? It seemed a great idea on paper, but very scary because it meant we would have to change our entire lives into homeschooling. And how would that work? And more important, can I do it alone? A lot of doubts come in your head. And then what would the child do for socialization? So after going back and forth, we took another life-altering decision. Gopan would take premature retirement from the Navy and help me with homeschooling. And we decided to settle in Bangalore so Dhruv could pursue music and we could give him stability, which is so important for our kids. So in 2020, just before the pandemic began, we chalked out a new plan for Dhruv and for us. We stopped all therapies. We started homeschooling. And by a coincidence, it's been exactly 2 years now. I will be honest and say it's not been easy. There are good days and there are bad days where I still have doubts. Oh my God, should I do NIOS? Should I do it? Does he need a certification? All those things come. But we are learning to take all of them in our stride. And I'm glad we took the call. As he has said, there's so much more than what we ever imagined. He's also part of the Bangalore School of Music Youth Choir, and he has just started learning Hindustani vocals. So in our case, what is also helping is Gopan being around and us working as a team together as a family. And Dhruv has become much more confident. He's become more flexible, expressive, and social. And he's enjoying life. He's enjoying being himself. So like the other day, he told me, don't look with your eyes. So I realized he doesn't like making eye contact. And that was his way of saying, don't look with your eyes. In my phone, there's a picture of him. It's his face. So if he sees a phone, he'll say, turn the phone because he doesn't like to look at the eyes. So there are times he does look. So I'm getting to know much more about what goes on in his mind. And we don't force him to make eye contact. And now at the age of 12, he started writing because we're going at his pace. So the challenges remain. And this is something which I want to reiterate to parents who are listening. Autism and dyspraxia are lifelong disorders. So the challenges will remain. But, they do lessen because we learn better strategies and techniques to cope with them. And one last thing I would like to say is this. In our society, we are so obsessed with schooling and academics. And if our kids are good in something creative, be it painting, music, cooking, it's only seen as a hobby. And more especially parents I know are running after so-called inclusive schools. But the harsh reality is all schools are about academics. And some children with disabilities can manage academics. Some cannot. Like I remember when I pulled out Dhruv, a lot of people asked me, why are you pulling him out? He's verbal. So the impression is if you're verbal, you can manage. Sorry, that's not true. Okay. So understand your child. And what I would say is instead of focusing on the deficits, focus on the pluses, focus on the strengths. Every child is different. And you need to do what's best for your child. So follow your child's lead and do what makes him happy. Dhruv has changed Gopan and me for the better. And he's made us look at life with a different perspective. So all of you listeners out there, all of you parents, just observe your child, connect to them, and just do what makes them happy and just watch them soar and progress. Thank you.
Thank you, Suja, for a very insightful sharing. And you just carried on what Bindu and Neha said. It was like you were three people, but you all spoke in the same voice. Listen to your child, respect your child, follow your child's lead. And I think that's what even Viraj and Navneet told us before you guys started out. So thank you so much. So now we move on to Anjana. So she's going to share about the importance of communication training in early years. So it's communication training, not speech training. Anjana?
Yes, Chitra. So, like I said in my introduction, I wish the job title was communication therapist, because even as a speech language therapist, nowadays it's different. But earlier, when I started working, going by the job title, parents would approach a speech language therapist or pathologist with the intention of getting their child's speech clarity fixed, or improving the speech clarity and so on. So my child needs to speak more clearly, or speak more and so on. So I also started, I was into this, and there was this one child, one student. There was this one student because of which I really got into alternative and augmentative communication. I mean, before getting into that, I would just like to delineate the difference between, for the listeners, delineate the difference between communication language and speech. Because for many of us who are not in this field, or who have just starting to understand these things, communication is equal to speech, right? So if you look at communication, it all begins with an idea, a thought, a feeling, a sensation, or an urge to connect with another person. And that is intact. And then comes the layer of language, where you put words and you use language to uh, and attach it to the idea that was in your mind. And then comes the last layer, which is programming the speech muscles. I mean, this happens automatically. It's not a voluntary thing. And that's the last layer, is where a lot of autistic individuals have trouble. So either they have trouble, they have unreliable speech, or many of them are non-speaking, and many of them, as you've heard before, have apraxia of speech, which makes speech very, very difficult for them. In fact, speech is a very complex motor act, and for all of us who are able to do that, we are so unconsciously doing it. It's so easy. But for children who have apraxia of speech, or even verbal individuals on the autism spectrum, sometimes struggle with using speech as their main mode of communication at times, when they have a meltdown, or when they have a sensory overwhelm. So I've heard, I would like to quote one of the adult autistic individuals say that when I have a sensory overwhelm, or when I'm having a meltdown, or when I'm stressed out, you might lose the ability to do some advanced maths, but for me it's speech that goes away first. So that means that they would require an augmentative or an alternative mode of communication. And coming back to this student, so the parent had approached me for speech clarity, but as we started working with him, he was picking up language concepts so well. And I knew that we can't stop there. I mean, we are expecting the child to express himself, or to exhibit that he knows a certain thing, all by just one mode of communication, which is speech. And I thought that's not fair. We are all multimodal communicators. We very conveniently choose whether to text, or whether to email, or whether to call, or we are choosing our modes of communication every day. And why do we have to? And it's the same for children, individuals with communication challenges. So I think, like I said, communication is a toolbox, and I think we should provide access to other modes of communication as well. And they get to choose what mode of communication they whatever is appropriate in that particular situation, or what comes easier for them in that instance. So this student, because of this student, I got into AAC, and then we went, I explained, and the parent also understood that, language is different and then speech is different. So, and now the student is at an advanced level. And I've seen the same with many other students as well. So I feel, we should, like Bindu and Navneet, Suja, all of them have shared. I think it's about presuming competence, connecting with them, and I think everyone can communicate. Just believing that everyone has the need to communicate. If you're human, you have the need to communicate. Everyone can communicate, everyone can learn. So going by that presumption, going by, presuming that potential, I think it's very much needed, to provide an access to communication for everybody, to whatever extent is possible. And as Neha said, literacy is also very important. We need to provide literacy intervention. So there's a lot being said about functional skills, and we come from this school of thought that functional skills means, getting the child to be independent, toileting, looking at toileting skills, and other vocational skills. Of course, they have their place, but I think we need to expand, we need to evolve into a different thinking about functional skills. I think literacy is a functional skill, communication is a functional skill. Chitra was asking about, I like that question about advocacy. How does one advocate? So if they have to advocate for themselves, and if they have to really autonomously and independently express something, literacy is the ultimate tool. So I think I would like to say that, presume competence, provide communication access, whatever it is, not just go after speech, because speech can be very difficult for individuals with apraxia. So look at communication. Communication should be the priority for all individuals. And that opens up so many more channels for, doing many more things in life. So I would like to, this is one quote that's often quoted, and I'm tempted to share this with you all before I stop. This is a quote by Daniel Webster. So he says, "If all my possessions were taken from me, with one exception, I would choose to keep the power of communication, for by it, I would soon regain all the rest." So I think that's the power of communication. And so I would urge all parents to go for communication, and then, building the communication toolbox with all possible elements of communication. Thank you.
Thank you, Anjana. That quote summed everything up. So thank you for emphasizing the importance of communication and not running behind speech, and how it opens up doors and it makes life easier, so much easier, for not just for our children, but also for us. Half the time, as parents, we spend being anxious, trying to figure out what does our child want. If the child is not speaking or not using speech as a mode of communication. So thank you once again for emphasizing the importance of communication. So now we go over to Akshay. And Akshay, my question to you is, how different is the approach to education that has been adopted by your organization's Sense Kaleidoscope when you compare it to a mainstream approach or a center-based approach to training, which is what we see typically in the community, right? And why did you choose to take this approach? So over to you, Akshay.
Thank you. Thank you for that question, Chitra. I think before I begin answering the question that you have asked, it's important to understand that I myself am a neurodiverse person. I struggled with dyslexia and ADHD as a child, and at that time there were no labels, as we all know. So, kids with these so-called invisible syndromes, as I call them, are assumed to be lazy, incompetent, and truthfully made to feel invisible. So the struggles that I think are a process that kind of defines an individual at that point in time who's reaching out for help but not getting it, and not getting it because people around that person do not understand what they need to do specifically to meet the needs of that individual. That is a personal journey for me. It was also the reason why I came into this space, because I very, very strongly believe that everybody has a right to education. And it does not matter what the limitations could be or what the challenges could be. If only there is a possibility that the system is able to open up and think in a holistic manner, we will be able to provide and make it true that there is a right to education for everyone. So when I think education is a really big word with the space that I set up, started with the idea of arts-based intervention, because in the UK where I was practicing, there is such a huge connect between the arts and education. There is such a huge ability to see that you can learn so many things in your life through the arts. You can experience them, you can live them. And those formats of learning are, I think, now used very extensively in those spaces. However, in India, we are still, like I think everybody has been talking about, we're still sitting in the very traditional format of education, which is probably one of the reasons why we are not able to translate, or we are not able to see what we actually want to get. So SK started with the dream of making it possible no matter what, to be very honest. When we started the work, we started getting kids that many of the other schools were not able to work with. Those were the kids that we actually started with. Kids whose parents were told that they could not continue with their cognitive programs because they were either regressed very severely in the cognitive, social, emotional areas, or they were being aggressive. I mean, I really don't like that word aggression, because it's reactive aggression that we are dealing with. We are provoking that aggression and we are forgetting that aggression doesn't happen in isolation. It happens because there is a provocation. And that's what most of the individuals with autism that I have worked with struggled with. I have kids who have come to me from regular setups, post having a lot of bullying issues. I have kids who have come to me from special setups or alternative setups where they were not really made to interact in the way that they were meant to achieve the potential of the individual. So our space started looking at what is essential. I know the word functional, I think for me, it has different, very different connotation. It's not about, I think specifically in India, functional, when we use the word functional, it has a certain limitation. That's not how it is perceived across the world, or at least in the space where I was trained. When we say functional academics, we really work with those logistics. We follow the Steiner mechanisms. We use Krishnamurti's philosophies. So we are very, very strongly based on those philosophies, the way we kind of started off. Our curriculum is designed and guided by my students. I realized that the curriculum that we had going over here was absolutely meaningless. There was nothing that they could apply. And if I'm studying for 10 years, 12 years of my life, and eventually I cannot apply any of that, it does not help me to navigate through my life circumstances. It does not help me to negotiate through my life circumstances. Then why am I doing it? So that was, I mean, all of the kids also who came to me, the minute you try to put them into this classroom setup, you will start seeing them respond in a very angry way. They were just not wanting to be there. So the challenge was, okay, how do we create a classroom that's going to make them happy and get them to want to engage with the material? So we moved completely towards tech. Most of the kids, there's research to prove it as well, because technology is predictable. It's less pressurizing, they automatically kind of go to it. They know that a delete button is going to do delete. It's not going to do anything else. It's not going to surprise me. So I am happy. So we introduced the first smart classrooms for autism in the city. They had huge smart touch boards. We started working with the kids in the way that they actually wanted us to work. If they wanted some visual material, they wanted that auditory input, we would bring it. If they wanted movement input, we would bring it. We started connecting a lot of the concepts that need to be. So we are checklisting. I understand when educators or psychologists turn around and say that there is a checklist you need to abide by. I get it. So while we are checklisting that, we don't have to make it so difficult. It can be done. There are possibilities that we can checklist those same key concepts, but also make it relevant to that student's personal experiences, relevant in such a way that it helps the child navigate, it helps the child understand, okay, why do I have to wake up in the morning and go to school? It's a very simple question. Why should I do this? So I think that's where we essentially worked. The technology really helped us. The fact that I was working with a lot of content that was based out of India, which is very functional. I was picking up stories from their personal lives. I mean, we have done things like my co-founder's son is Pranav, who I think struggled a great deal and has been my guiding star. Very, very grateful to him, because if not for him, we would not have had this curriculum in place today in SK, which is creating the impact that it is. Pranav really struggled quite a lot with his journey, because when he came to us at the age of 12, many teachers had turned around or schools had turned around and told Anima that they cannot work with him. He's not going to grow cognitively. And that's where we kind of started picking things up from. So, for him to get involved, he loved kittens, and there was a litter of kittens near the school. So I took him outside. He had an experience with the kittens, and that was the story that we actually put in place. That's where he started reading. That's when he started answering questions. He realized, okay, this is a question, and now I'm going to answer this. It was a personalized experience, and with something that he's interested in. I didn't force him into a place that he did not want to be in. So, for example, if he's anxious around a dog, I'm not going to do it. He was wanting to play with the kittens. He kept on looking at them for 4 or 5 days. So obviously it's about how much we observe as the people in the environment to see what other things that we can excite our children with. And that's how the entire program came into play. The arts program also that we actually run, and I think have successfully proven to take out as artists, because our students have gone to Paris and shown, they've gone to Kochi Biennale, and they have also stood in front of media and delivered their speeches. While they are not beautifully articulated, I think every time I see them standing and talking, and even if it is the wrong subject, object, verb, it does not matter. The fact that they're able to talk about their experiences, they're able to tell what they felt, becomes more important for us. So I think that is the approach. But I would not say that it's completely unique, because like I told you, that the educational philosophies of great thinkers like Krishnamurti and Waldorf is where we base it on. And our guiding stars are our students. If it means that we have to customize every lesson plan to their interest and then teach them a concept through it, we will do it. When we had to do science concepts, and Pranav would tell me, okay, Pranav, where did you get the tomato from? And he would say the name of this mall that he was getting it from. So then we started getting him to grow a plant. So we actually go down and do everything experiential. And that's, I think, what sets us apart. So I think I've answered that question there.
Thank you, Akshay, for a very nice introduction, and thank you for helping us understand why and how you came about doing what you're doing now. So we've kind of come to the end of the sharings, but we are open to questions. And if anybody wants to ask a question to any of the panelists, please go ahead and do so. If you have not put it in the chat. Pranjal, are there any questions for the panelists? Mithun? Any parent has any questions, or I'm going to just ask randomly? Yeah, sure. Mithun?
Yeah, there is a question in YouTube. My son is
Okay.
5 years, mild to moderate ASD. I'm looking for an app place where he can become literate and independent in life. I think Karishma Shekhar. I mean, I don't know whether she's there in the chat.
Okay. So I think that question could be answered by a parent and a professional. So, because there are two angles to the question. And so, would any of you be open to answering Karishma, giving her some suggestions?
And there are a few people who raise their hands, by the way. You can just check in the
Okay,
chat.
okay, yeah. So, Akshay, would you like to answer that? Or
Thank
one
you.
of the
I was
parents?
waiting. Yeah, I was thinking that somebody will get the first one. Okay.
Yeah. Sure.
I'll take that. So the question is, how do you take care of social interactions for your kids and students? So we are a space where we have a classroom with a limitation of one teacher with 4 students. We ensure that we have a very strong bond built in between these 4 students and also the families that actually are part of the classroom. So the fact that we are working in such a small way really helps us. And I strongly believe, personally, from my experience and also from what my students have actually told me, and I think you can see them in YouTube videos. We have a page called the Sense Kaleidoscopes where you will see them interacting. You will see them doing presentations, talking about a lot of things. I try to push them to talk as much as possible. And we also do a lot of things like we spend night outs, we go out to restaurants. So that's what I was trying to bring across. We are not what you understand as a regular school. We have designed an autism specific curriculum, again, which is guided and led by them. The socialization is also part of that entire education. So we do not compartmentalize things. We do not say that this is a social skill class, or this is a life skill class, and this is a cognitive class. I do not see education fragmented in that manner. I think that the right kind of education needs to kind of come together. So if you are in a classroom, for example, every morning we have mood boards that is filled by our kids. Sometimes they find it very difficult to spontaneously talk about something that they are bothered about emotionally. So they come to the class, and we have mood boards in which they write, and you can see photographs of these mood boards on our Facebook page, post which it also we ensure as teachers that we go in and we start talking about what's bothering them. I somehow can't get my head around the fact that if somebody comes in, distressed into a classroom and you just start a class, I don't see how something like that can be done. So we talk to those kids and we have a conversation about, yesterday I told my dad to take me to see the train and he's refused. I'm really angry with him and I'm not going to go back home ever, or I'm going to go alone to the train station. I mean, we need to talk about this. It's very important. So it's a daily process. So if you tell me, do you manage socialization in 1 hour in a day? No, I can't. If my student wants to be pulled out 16 times during the day because he's really upset, I have to do it. I will again reiterate, we are student led. All the decisions in my space are taken by my students. If they decide they are not going to do it, and I work with teenagers and adults quite a bit, that's my core area of expertise. So I think by that time, you can't do what you would do otherwise. A teenager will demand that respect, and I think if you don't give it, then we are going to have more complications. So we don't work in those ways. I hope I have answered that.
Thank you, Akshay. So I'm just going to go back to the question that Mithun had shared from the YouTube chat. Mithun, could you repeat the question? The question from Karishma.
Yeah, I think that question was that she has a child in mild and moderate autism. and what kind of interventions she should be seeking for a child right now?
Anjana or Akshay, one of you, because you're the professionals here. So could you just
Okay. Sorry, Anjana, are you going? You can go.
No, go ahead, Akshay.
Chitra, she's asking for a specific space for life support, life skill support. That's what I understood.
No,
you got cut off when you were.
It was for a smaller. It's for a smaller kid. So I think maybe Anjana would be more equipped to answer that. Yeah.
So I think the first step would be to get an assessment.
Just age is 5 years, Anjana. Age is 5 years.
Okay. Yeah. I think the first step would be to get an assessment to understand, especially to understand the sensory profile of the child. Because a lot of the external behavior or the external appearance and things that the child you would see the child doing can be explained based on the sensory profile of the child. So I suggest an OT assessment, and in terms of intervention, I think a play-based approach to trying to connect with the child. And I think it's also very important as a parent to feel empowered at this phase. So you can look out for coaching programs where they coach the parents to be, train the trainer kind of programs, where they coach parents on how to communicate, how to connect. So there are a lot of fundamental skills that need to be taken care of. Even before moving on to things like speaking, trying to teach something, or trying to label things, and trying to whatever it is. So I think the fundamental skills, such as trying to join in with the child, and how to reciprocally interact with the child, and how to basically connect with the child. So I think you would benefit from a parent coaching program where you're taught to work on these things. And then also look for a therapist, like many of the parents earlier said, who are aligned with this kind of an approach, a play-based approach, which is child-led, and taking into consideration the child's level, and the child's needs, interests, and going with the pace of the child. So I think that's good for.
Thank you, Anjana. I'm just going to put another question which has come in the chat about whom should we approach to find out if the child has oromotor issues. So could you just give a brief response?
I think you should approach a speech therapist specialized in swallowing and feeding management, and also anybody trained in oral placement therapy or prompt therapy would be a good choice to go with.
Okay. Thank you, Anjana. So I can see a few raised hands. So since we are already beyond time, I'm just going to pick up, just call out Srividya Subramaniam. You had a question. And just before you ask, Srividya, so there is a poll which would have popped up for everybody. So it would be great if all of you could just respond to it's a very short poll. Yeah, please do respond. Srividya, you can go ahead and ask your question. You're muted, Srividya. And could you also mention who you would like to answer that question, the question you have?
Hi everyone. First of all, thank you, Chitra, and everyone for arranging this. This has been great. It was lovely to listen to everyone, and these kind of things help a lot, even when we're doing things for our kids, to keep this going, to get together as a group and find out and keep going back to the basics. I find it very helpful for myself. So I want to thank everyone who talked here. My question is, it's not specifically a question to anyone. I'm not sure who is the best to answer it. So I'll just put it out there, and anyone who feels they want to can please take it up. I want I want to understand how to work around the negative language that we use when we talk about atypical children, right? We tend to do it even when we don't mean it at all. It's part of the typical people's psyche at some level, right? We use words like challenges, problems, issues, right? And I have to consciously constrain myself from using those words, not, irrespective of whether or not my child is present around me, right? Because that forms the whole ecosystem of everything, right? Of how we perceive them, how they perceive themselves, of advocacy and everything. So I want to know if there is any guide sort of a thing out there. If anyone would like to guide me, where can I go? How can I understand, or how can I shape my language, get better when I'm talking about this?
So I think the parents could chip in and answer, because I'm sure all of you struggle with these things. So any of the parents, it would be great to.
Chitra, I'd like to take this one.
Yeah, sure, Suja, please go ahead. Yeah.
Hi, Srividya. So I totally get where you're coming from. And believe me, this is something which, which happens pretty regularly. See, like I'll give you an example. When I'm working with my son, I'm doing homeschooling. Many a time, something is difficult for him, but he doesn't really want to say it's difficult. So then, I explain that sometimes things are difficult for me also. Sometimes it's difficult for his dad also. There's nothing wrong in that. I'll give you an instance. A friend of mine had messaged me saying, a child was upset because somebody called him silly. And she was kind of feeling bad about it. So I told her, but why are we looking at it in a negative way? Silly means we are all silly at times, right? We do masti, we have fun. So I think when we say something negative also, it all depends on how you perceive a word, right? It's like this. Suppose there are people who are called stubborn. Now, stubborn can be negative or positive. It all depends on how you look at it. If you have a goal and you're stubborn that you want to achieve it, that's a great quality, I think, right? So I'm saying, let's not, many a time we have a tendency to look at things in either black or white. Life is not like that. Everything is gray. All of us have, we're all a mix of grays, right? Yeah. Like we all have good days and bad days. So that's how I explain to my son in a very simple way that, it's okay. Sometimes there are times I'm doing something with him and he, and I ask him and he'll say it's easy. So by the way, he's also listening into all this. I did tell him he can listen to what I am speaking. So, to say it is difficult because he thinks he doesn't know. Like, is it okay to be wrong? Is it okay to? But then I explain it and he opens up and says, yes, it is difficult. So I think Srividya, see, on a daily basis, we all go through these pluses, negatives. At the end, it just matters how you view it. So just change that negative to a positive. Simple. I hope that answers your question.
It helps a lot. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Anybody else wants to chip in?
I would like to.
Yeah, sure, Anjana.
That's a very unique question and an important question. I think we need to reframe the narrative around autism and any similar condition. So I would suggest you can look up neurodiversity affirming neurodiversity approach of describing a certain condition. So when you look at it from that angle, you wouldn't say a disorder. The term disorder is not used, and person first label is used. Like you say autistic individual rather than person with autism. But yeah, there are so many controversies around it and so on. I think in the professional network, some certain labels are still being used just to communicate. I think just look at it like Suja said, just look at it in terms of labels being used to communicate something and not really take it. Of course, it's true that words have energy, and I just have one mantra: refrain or reframe or refrain. So if you have the urge to you call somebody stupid or whatever it is, try to reframe it, or just refrain from using it, because it really affects. Yeah, so I think that's it. And then within the professional practice as well, I'm also trying to make that shift in my language. So I'm trying to make it more descriptive, like the child has speech is so and so, rather than saying that speech is disordered. And also I use the term atypical features, atypical language, or atypical. The term atypical is something that I use a lot rather than calling it a disorder. Yeah, so that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anjana.
Thank you, Anjana. So I'm just going to add to what all of them said. On a daily basis, as Suja said, as parents especially, we do end up using sometimes. So one of the things that I continue to do is I apologize to my son, or I explain it to him that maybe I did make a mistake. And sometimes over the time, it just, like, you get into that bond with your child, because none of us are perfect human beings and we are all undergoing the process of learning. So it's just natural. And the very fact that you mentioned that you're conscious, so you are going in the right direction. So yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. We'll just take one more question. I think there's somebody called Sue who's raised their hand. Sue, S-U. I don't know if it's Sue or it's any
Hi. It is me. Actually, I was in a hurry. I had to log in. I was late, so I logged in a little crazily. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. And
yes,
like,
I was very curious to answer the question about the language, usage of language.
Okay. So can you just let us know who this is? Because I'm honestly not able to figure out who this is. Your name.
My name is Sulakshana Chaudhary. I have got this Zoom invitation from one of my friends.
That's fine. Please go ahead, Sulakshana, because we can just see you as SU. So we just wanted to place a name to the voice. That's all. Please go ahead.
That's my Zoom name. Yeah, but what I wanted to say was like I have read a very powerful quote one day while I was working with my son. My son is just 4 years old, and I am not really sure. We are still processing if he really has some challenge, or if we're at that stage. He's absolutely normal on the face of it, but it feels to me as a mother, as I have a strong gut feeling that he has challenge. So what I would like to say, one thing that I have realized is that about Edison. Edison's mother one day, I believe, had gotten a letter from the school saying that he was thrown out of the school. But then his mother never shared that letter with the child, and instead turned it around saying that you were too much powerful for the school to support it. That's pretty much how it was for my son. I live in Denmark. I have moved just 11 days back to India to stay with my parents, to get the extra help to work with my son. So that's one thing that I keep reminding myself every day. So all I can say to every mother, every mother or every parent who's working with this is that's what we have to remind ourselves, that it is us who are the key. It is who we are. I mean, we are the advocates. We are the providers for them. We are the hope for them. Yes. So just whatever we do, apologize, like you mentioned, Chitra Garu, that we apologize, we be honest, we be transparent to them. I make mistakes because I am silly too. So are you. So it's fine. So it's a great thing. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Sulakshana. Thank you so much for that. I can see one raised hand, and I remember seeing one raised hand from R&R Gymnastics, and I can see a message. So I'm assuming it's you, Vivian. So do you want to say something to Viraj? Is that why you had raised your hand? Are you okay? Vivian, you can speak if you want to say something to Viraj. Are you there, Vivian? Would you like to say something to Viraj? Has she left? I'm not too sure.
He's unable to mute. Somebody will have to help.
Mithun,
Yeah.
can you just look into that issue? There seems to be some technical issue.
No, it's not muted. Yeah, he just muted.
Okay. Okay. Vivian? Yeah.
Finally, yes.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So
I just
I'm
wanted to
assuming
say
you wanted to say
congratulations.
something to Viraj. So please
Yes,
go
I
ahead.
I wanted to congratulate Viraj. I never knew he was married. So fantastic to hear and super happy for him. So congratulations, Viraj.
Yeah. And Vivian, I would request you to share how you know Viraj. And yeah, I think Viraj would also be happy to share that.
Yeah, so basically, I've been introduced. I run a gymnastics academy. It's called R&R Fit. And I have just one day I had one of the parents come to me and said, "You do all these wonderful classes for all these children. Why don't you? You're so patient." Because I also work with toddlers. I have something called this Rhythm and Rhyme, which is a music and movement program. And that's when I got introduced to this child called Pranav, and the mother said, just let's see what he does in your space. And it was a much smaller space then. And slowly Pranav started, wanting to climb certain apparatus that we had, wanted to, go over hurdles. And I realized I had the patience to walk him through some of the activities. And slowly, yes, that got me excited. A lot of parents, and in fact, Tarun's been with me for a very long time, who's Chitra's son as well. So slowly getting them to build confidence, just helping them with some more motor planning. I'm not somebody who I did go ahead and finally get an autism fitness certification from in Singapore, but beyond that, I've it's been exciting for me to just be able to work with some of them. I remember Viraj coming to me and saying, "I'm not very good, but I think I want to learn how to just do some of these exercises." And patiently we went through it. And he was that time with SAP Labs, so I would work around his schedule. So yeah, it's been a lovely journey and a fabulous work from all you wonderful, wonderful professionals. Whatever way I can help, I'd be more than happy to do that.
Thank you, Vivian. So Viraj volunteered at Vivian's space. And
Yes.
I think, Viraj, do you want to add to it? How was your experience there?
It helped me. She gave me some exercises, and as of now, post the lockdown, I haven't been exercising, but the time when I was exercising, I really benefited from it.
Thank you, Viraj. So I'm going to take the last question. I can see one last hand up. Prashanti, please go ahead and ask your question. And if you could say who you want to ask the question, that would be great. Prashanti, are you there?
Hi, Chitra. This is Prashanti.
Can you speak up a little?
Are you able to hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is Prashanti. So I wanted just to congratulate the kids, for their nice the way they answered the questions. It gave altogether a different perspective. So a big shout out to the kids actually, and the therapists too, who work very hard. And this talk was quite good. Like we got some insights which are already there, but added few more.
Okay, so thank you, Prashanti. And I hope everybody's responded to the poll. So I think that brings us to the end of this thing. So before we log out, I would just like to just say something in conclusion. I'm sure all of you feel the same like me, that we've had so many valuable insights. So one that stood out very strongly is follow your child's lead. And that was linked so closely to what our autistic panelists said about the need to listen to them. And the point that Anjana put out about communication toolbox and presuming competence, very powerful things, but it can make it, these can be very big game changers for our children. And I think across the speakers, there was a common thread of non-conventional paths to be followed as per the needs of the child. So the child needs to be the focus and not the path that we are taking. So, and another thing that came across very strongly, I think whoever the parents who participated, we could clearly see how they were all very strong advocates for their children. And that is something which all of us as parents need to, and even professionals. I know of a lot of professionals also, like even the two professionals who joined us today, they were advocating for the children they're working with. So advocating for the child, at the same time nurturing their advocacy skills. These are again very important things. And the need that was very evident in what a lot of the people here said, to change the definition of independence to include autonomy and choice, which I believe are stepping stones towards self-advocacy. And that is where we could find more opportunities to listen and learn to the real experts, that is our autistic individuals, the people who experience what the different life that we keep reading about and we keep talking about, but their experiences need to be our learning books. And last but not the least, I think one message came out very clearly about the need to change the language around autism. And I think also to change the way we perceive autism as not a deficit-based thing, but as just that, a different brain, a different way of being. So with that, I'm going to end this session. Thank you everybody for being here. A special thank you to the panelists. Navneet, Viraj, thank you so much for sharing your views, because we need to hear more from people on the spectrum. That is our true learning ground. And thank you to the parents, Bindu, Suja, and Neha. Thank you for sharing your, I know the time was very limited. As parents, we can talk for a long time about our journeys. And each journey, I believe, is big enough and has enough content for a separate book. So each of our journeys can be put out as single books. And thank you to Akshay and Anjana also for being here and supporting us and so patiently answering the questions. And yeah, we've exceeded time, but I guess that's what happens when a lot of passionate people get together and start talking. So thank you once again, and hopefully we'll have something like this even in future. Thank you.